This next guest has become very well known in the narcissistic abuse recovery and codependency recovery space. This guest is somebody that I brought on because I wanted him to come on and talk to us about boundaries. I get this question all the time from people with toxic and narcissistic parents is how do I set boundaries? What exactly are boundaries? I don't know what my boundaries are, all of these things. And so we're going to be talking about some really interesting methods that you can use, some step-by-step methods that can help you with setting boundaries, that could also just help you with dealing with narcissistic abuse and the narcissistic and toxic parent in your life. So let us welcome Kenny Weiss. He's an author, a YouTuber, a teacher, a healer, and a coach. And through his life-changing emotional authenticity method, Kenny has a unique ability to see what everyone else has missed. He imparts immediate, deep wisdom that generates innovative, transformative solutions that achieve rapid results while also allowing individuals and couples to heal their past emotional pain and reclaim their authentic selves. So let us welcome Kenny Weiss. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kenny.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it's really, really good to finally meet you and then to be able to have a discussion with you about boundaries. I think it's something that I know my clients ask me about constantly, and we get really confused about them.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Codependence recovery is multi-layered and it, there's a lot of information out there. Um, Sadly, at least to me, a lot of people are unaware of Pia Melody. And
Mhm.
to me, she's the best. There are a lot of people like, oh gosh, just drew, but Bradshaw is great. There are a lot of great teachers of codependency, but as far as boundaries and the basic structure, and she's the only person I know who's identified most people think of codependence as the disempowered victim gets run over, is a people pleaser, and that's true, but it's a scale. That's one side of the scale. The other side is what's called the falsely empowered, and these are what we think are the healthy, normal, successful people. And interestingly, most people are confusing narcissists with a falsely empowered codependent. And so, um, I feel very fortunate that I got pointed in her direction because
Yeah.
to me, if you're not aware of her process, then that's why you're struggling with codependence and boundaries and all of this. To me, she's done the best job of anybody. And for whatever reason, she's not as big of a name as most, but it certainly helped me and has helped the clients I've worked with.
Okay. So Pia Melody.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Piamellody. And I say this all the time. She's written three books, Facing Codependence, Facing Love Addiction, and Intimacy Factor. I have all three on my recommended reading list
Mhm.
on my website. I say this to everybody. I don't think any human on this planet should be allowed to go on a date until they read those three books. They're that important.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. So, I mean, it's so important to give these resources out too, so that people can be more educated. I'm going to go read them now too. So, like, I need those. Because, I think it's important that we're always growing and moving and
Yeah,
changing and all of that. So,
yeah, definitely.
so you have shared with me that you have three steps that to safeguard yourself
Yeah,
from a narcissistic parent or toxic family member.
yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but three sort of basic things to help you not get run over by them and at least begin the process of protecting yourself. And the first step in that is what I say, turn everything around. And what I mean by that is whenever we judge, blame, criticize, or hate anyone or anything, no matter who's doing it, we're always talking to ourselves.
Mhm.
It may be true that person is doing it, but the only reason we are affected by it or upset by it is because somewhere in our life we're doing the exact same thing. Now, I'm not going to divert into explaining why that is because I know people are like, what? I don't do that.
Yeah.
I've written a whole book on it and it, or two books, and so that's a different topic. I
Mhm.
just want you to be aware that's how denial and self-deception works. And so the key for you, at least based on what we're talking about today, is if you have a toxic or narcissistic parent or anyone in your life like that,
Mhm.
when they do, because they're experts at judging, blaming, criticizing, gaslighting, all of that, is to immediately use the boundary of, okay, this is about them.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
whatever their criticism is take instead of absorbing it, what's called
Yeah.
our internal boundary, instead of allowing it into our internal boundary, grab it and hold it up here.
Mm.
And you may not be able to in the moment, but when you get away, you can sit there and go, okay, so how are they doing this in their life? Because what they're really doing, people don't realize this, is when we're in that place,
Mhm.
what we're really trying to do is talk to ourselves and tell ourselves the unhealed aspects of ourselves that we've never dealt with and ultimately have never forgiven ourselves for.
Mm.
So instantly, when a toxic person is doing that, we can create the boundary of, oh my God, they're sharing their brokenness with me. This is the scared, hurt
Mhm.
child that
Yeah.
created the toxic narcissistic person. So all of a sudden, our view of them, they're not so big, they're not so scary. Like what, at least what happens to me is, I picture a 2, 4, 6, 8, 10-year-old child in the corner
Yeah.
pointing the finger at me. Well, I'm much less threatened by a child.
Yeah.
That instantly lowers my temperature.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't mean I forgive them or let them off the hook, but
Yeah.
I don't allow their unhealed pain inside of me.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so that's the first step, is to recognize that all of their slander and abuse,
Mhm.
they're
And
telling you about their pain.
that can really bring up compassion in you too, because when you realize or understand that you were raised by a emotionally stunted human who's
Yeah.
like 2, 3 years old tops,
Yes.
it's like, oh, this little kid is just
Yeah.
pushing back. They're like a caged animal,
Exactly. Beautifully
Yeah.
said. Yeah, because
Yeah.
if they truly are narcissistic, they are stuck in the narcissistic stage of development, which is, 3 to 4 years old. And um, yeah, if you have kids, think of your own 3 or 4-year-old. Would you yell and scream and you just be, oh, poor things that, really lost it today.
Yeah, they're
You
having a
know?
really rough
Yeah,
day.
they're awfully tired.
Exactly.
Somebody didn't get their nap, you
That's
know?
right. That's exactly where you
Right?
go to.
And so you're just less affected. You're like, oh, okay, you poor, come here, sweetheart. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously that's not how you would, you probably wouldn't want to do that.
Hmm.
But it brings you into truth. And that's one of the
Hmm.
core symptoms of codependence, is out of touch with reality.
Hmm.
We're not seeing the truth of the situation.
That's
And
true.
and so one of what that does is immediately brings us back into reality. It Because when we get affected, we've just fallen back into our childhood. And
Yeah.
so now you have two children trying to respond to each other. Neither is in reality, neither is in adulthood.
Hmm.
And so this allows us to stay what Pia Melody calls, the moderate and mature adult. And
Hmm.
from that place, we can understand what's coming, and that moves us into boundary number 2, which is,
Okay.
don't stand in front of abuse. We get
Mm.
trained by these family members or parents that it's our job to accept their pain and abuse.
Yeah.
And so we will feel tremendous guilt and shame if we don't stand in front of it, if we don't try and work it out, if we don't answer their questions, if we don't try and satisfy them.
Right.
Well, we're no longer the child. It's not our job, because ultimately in that moment, they're wanting us to be their parent.
Yes.
Well,
Which is so topsy-turvy and it's so confusing because then you're being put in the position of caring for them and also trying to care for yourself in that same moment. And it can just get like, okay, what do I do now? You know?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's been because of their stunted development, and they were
Mhm.
never parented um, lovingly and affectionately. They've trained us to do that for them. And
Mhm.
so it's an instant reaction for us to drop into our child. And because every child needs to physically and emotionally connect to another human being or they'll die. And so that's why
Mm.
we go there. We're like, as a child, we go, I will accept any manipulation, any coercion, I'll accept any treatment.
Mhm.
Because if I don't attach to you in some way, if I don't develop some maladaptive coping skill like codependence, I will die. And so it's a
Mhm.
brilliant strategy that we developed as a child to
Mhm.
survive this type of parenting. The problem is, as an adult and as we go through life, it becomes more and more victimizing on us. And
Right.
so when they start to get this way and you've turned it around and you recognize it, that it's about them, you can use what's called a wall of pleasantness. And
Oh.
so it, what most people will do when a parent or toxic person or family member attacks them is they'll try and defend and
Yep,
argue. They'll try and get
absolutely.
them to see how they're wrong and
Mhm.
try and tell them how their words or actions are making them feel.
Yep. And of course, they want that because that gives them the supply that they're looking for.
Yeah,
That's your energy, and they're looking to take your energy, basically.
it's exactly
Mhm.
why they did it. And so the first thing we have to remember is we now know that all emotions are learned. We're not
Mhm.
born them, we're born with affect, which is different than emotions.
Uh-huh.
And so we learn what are called simulation concepts and definitions of an emotion. So, you can think about this like eating habits.
Mhm.
I was raised chew with your mouth closed, no elbows on the table, don't talk with your mouth full.
Right.
Well, if you were raised in Asia, it's the exact opposite. You need to throw food all over the place, make as much noise as possible, hunch over your food. So there
Yeah.
are two people who learn completely simulation concepts and definitions for what manners would be. And so they'd have completely different emotional reactions.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so an Asian person coming into my house, I'd be like, oh my gosh, and vice versa. So whenever
Mhm.
we're having an emotional reaction to them, we are choosing to make ourselves feel that way. And we learned that simulation concept and definition from watching them. And so that's
Mm.
why my whole process is teaching people how to rework those emotions and create new simulation concepts and definitions. I'm not going to get into that process. That's in my classes, my books, all that stuff.
Okay.
But the thing is to recognize, how do you respond with a wall of pleasantness? And that would look like,
Mhm.
I hear that you have a lot of feelings and beliefs about me right now. Um, I just need to let you know that when I hear you say those words, I choose to make myself feel really poor about myself. And that doesn't work for me.
Mhm.
So, at least in this moment, if you continue to choose those kind of words, I'm
Mhm.
going to have to leave because I don't like the way I'm making myself feel.
And there's the
You,
boundary
well, and
right
do you see what
there.
it does something really powerful?
Mhm.
What did you said it just a minute ago? What is the narcissist or toxic person constantly trying to get us to do?
Get our energy.
Yes.
Yeah. Feed them.
And get us sucked into taking care of them.
Yeah.
Well, did you see if you come back, well, you got to stop that. You're making me feel terrible.
Oh,
They
yeah.
boom, that's exactly what they're looking for is now they've just, you exploding with that energy is what they wanted. That's
Right.
their food. Well, you've just taken their food source away. You've made it all about themselves. Now they're blank and empty, and they're going to have to sit with the way they're making themselves feel. Plus, in an indirect way,
Mhm.
you're modeling what healthy parenting looks like. And
Oh, yes.
you're sending the covert message. I hear that you're not telling them who they are because it's none of our business, who they
Mhm.
are, what they feel, what they think. None of that matters.
Mhm.
But just hearing us exercise boundaries, they will be confronted by, oh my God, I'm doing this to myself. Now, they'll reject it,
Of course. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it won't change them. If they're truly narcissistic, your chances are slim to none.
Mhm.
But the point is they have nowhere to go from that because it's all about yourself. And so you go, you're welcome to keep using these words and talking in this manner if that works for you. But
Mhm.
if you do, I'm going to have to leave because this doesn't work for me. And then you have to follow through and go, oh, I
Yes.
see it doesn't work for you. You don't go, see, I just told you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I see it doesn't work for you. That's great. I'm going to leave.
Okay, I'm going to go now. And that's so important because if you don't do if any little bit of weakness that they sense, it could just be like a pinprick of it, and they just open it right wide open, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so by using the wall of pleasantness, you also exercise something else. You want to think about boundaries, like two people playing tennis.
Hmm.
So what separates people that are playing tennis?
We have a net.
Right. And so is it my job to jump over the net and tell them how to play tennis or tell them what they should think, feel, believe, or do while they're playing tennis? Is that any of my business?
No. I mean, if
No.
you're their coach, it's one thing, but even then, you
It's
wouldn't do that.
well, but a
You're in
coach is on the
play.
sidelines. He's not on the court.
Yeah, exactly. We're in play here. This is different, but yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Hmm.
They're not allowed to jump over the net. Now, a narcissist,
Okay.
by definition, doesn't know boundaries. They don't see a net.
There
That's
is
why
no net. Yeah.
That's why, in
Yeah.
general, boundaries don't work with narcissists. You will
Yeah.
have to expect that they will play tennis without a net and they will constantly come to your side of the court and try and tell you what to think, feel, believe, and do about
Right.
your tennis game, your life.
Hmm.
Well, that's called taking somebody's inventory. And so
Yeah.
the wall of pleasantness keeps you on your side of the tennis court. It lets them know this is how I
Mm.
play tennis. I don't, you get to play however you want.
That's
If
a
you
great
want
way
to
to
hit a
do.
forehand or backhand, good for you. Knock yourself out. I just don't like to play tennis that way. I play tennis this way, and I see
Mhm.
that doesn't work for you. Great. I'm going to go over to this other court and play instead.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so all you're doing is taking your own inventory,
Hmm.
not taking theirs. You're staying on your side of the net. If they try and cross over, you're just choosing to no longer play that game, and you're going to go play tennis with somebody else.
And I would imagine too that you have to be in a place of strength to really kind of to be able to carry out these kinds of I don't like calling them tactics because narcissists use tactics constantly, but they really are because you have to
Skills
have
and
a
tools.
strategy. You have to have build the skill. That's a
Yeah.
great
And you
way to.
have great intuition
Mhm.
because the third step ties into exactly that. And
Okay.
it kind of has two parts. And the first
Mhm.
part of it is acceptance. And
Mhm.
what we have to accept, because what gets us in trouble is because of our codependence, because they trained us to be overly focused on them, try and figure them out, try and get them centered and okay, just like a parent would, trying to calm an out of control child.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to let go of that job. And so we have to accept five things. They will
Mhm.
never listen. They will never admit that they are the problem. They will never compromise. They'll never be the parent you need them to be,
Mhm.
and they will never change. We have to come to grips with that and remind ourselves constantly. And that leads us into the second part of the third step, which is the third boundary is,
Mhm.
like I said, we spend all of our time focusing on them, trying to fix them. And we have to do the opposite. Just like turning it around, we have to turn our focus around back to ourselves and prioritize ourselves. And so, what I tell all my clients is when you find yourself obsessing about them, trying to figure them out, or upset about them, and you're just ruminating on
Mhm.
how they won't listen, how they won't admit they're the problem, they won't compromise, they won't be the parent you need them, how they won't change, that's your trigger to go, whoa, I need to get into recovery. Where's my book? I'm going to read Pia's book. What class am I taking? I'm going to go do one of the
Yeah.
modules. I need to set an appointment with my coach or therapist. In other words, we get trained that our job is to be sole focused on them. The answer is in the opposite. Every time
Mhm.
they display their narcissism or toxic behaviors, that's our trigger to learn how to become the parent for ourselves that they're no longer and never were possible of being. And we do that by making our recovery our priority. It's critical, and this is really
Mhm.
tough for people They love to watch thousands of videos and everything and
Yep.
come to summits to figure out mom and dad or the
Yeah.
toxic family member. There's a level of that that's appropriate,
Hmm.
but to truly navigate this, you have to learn to cut that off and switch to yourself and go, okay, it's
Yeah.
my job now to be the parent, to learn the things they never taught me, and boundaries and all these different skills and tools that people like us teach to
Right.
people like that. We have to go learn those skills and tools and make that our priority. And those are the, three
Yeah.
simple little boundary steps they can get started with.
And I think this is particularly difficult for somebody who's been in the face of narcissism, programmed by that narcissistic parent to be able to, I watch it all the time, to be able to um, this on, to really flip the script and start to really focus on me and put me first, because then people also get confused and they think, well, am I a narcissist? Because now I'm like focusing on me all the time. It's all about me. It's like, no, this is about your recovery, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing is when we've been, there's two things in what you said. First of all, the obsession with
Mhm.
um, and with how difficult that is something called the worst day cycle. It's something I discovered. I wrote about in my first both books, really.
Okay.
And what happens is when we go through these experiences as a child, it creates an emotional chemical addiction to repeat the exact same pain against ourselves as adults. And so, people like this, they always have careers that re-victimize themselves, hobbies,
Mhm.
friendships, relationships, everything in their life. Because it becomes an emotional chemical addiction, and our brain
Mhm.
doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, good or bad. All it cares about is known versus unknown. If I've done this, it wants to repeat it, even if it's bad. So you wonder why domestic abuse survivors stay, people in all these toxic situations stand in front of abuse and this feeling. It's because their brain, the way everybody's brain is designed, not just people who've been through this, all of
Mhm.
us, it seeks to repeat what it knows. Think of it this way.
Yeah. Okay.
Sledding, you ever think of 3 feet of powder just snowed overnight? You walk up to the top of the hill and you sled down once. You come back up, you do that 2 or 3 times. Now you're in that groove. If you tried to steer out, you can't. The walls are there. That's all of us.
Mhm.
And so recovery is about learning what steps did they teach me that I keep repeating as I go up this hill and I keep
Mhm.
sledding down. And so when I'm obsessed and get out of, can't exercise boundaries and get started,
Yeah.
this is why we focus on ourselves, is we have to learn how they conditioned us that way. And then the recovery process is learning new steps and strategies up to the top
Mhm.
of the hill. So we create what's called a new neural pathway. Now we go down, and now this becomes the new emotional chemical
Okay.
addiction that works for us, not against us. Again, I wrote
Mhm.
about all of that in my first book and how the worst day cycle works and all
Okay.
of that.
I
And
like that, the worst day cycle, because I mean, it's just like you can live inside of the worst day every single day for years on end.
yeah,
With
so
a parent like this, with this kind of programming and
yeah,
where it takes us. And so these steps that you have are really practical and useful, and but they're also um, uh, a way of programming yourself in a whole different way, flipping that script and
yeah,
becoming a strong, sovereign you through
yeah.
these steps. This is great. This is really practical.
We were going to talk about something else, but this seems really poignant to go in this direction. So I'm going to give people first steps to start discovering like you can bring me anyone you think is successful. All of us are stuck in the worst day cycle. It's a human
Mm.
process
Uh-huh.
that I discovered and I lay it all out. And here's how you can discover it in yourself. The next time you have any negative feeling, ask yourself, what am I feeling? Now, most people, 70% of the population is detached from their feelings, and so they don't know. Well, you can go to my website. Under the resources, you'll see feelings wheel. There's a free feelings wheel. You
Mhm.
look at that and figure out what it is you're feeling: frustrated, sad, scared, whatever.
Mhm.
There might be two or three. Find the one that feels the biggest.
Yeah.
Focus on that one, and then ask yourself, Where in my body do I feel that feeling? Because all feelings we store in our body.
Right.
Could be your
Absolutely.
legs, your heart, stomach. Then ask yourself, okay, what's my first memory of having this thought of being frustrated
Hmm.
and feeling that in my gut?
Hmm.
Well, they might remember the last argument a week ago. Great, write that down. Now ask yourself, when did that happen before? 2 years ago, my wife, da da da. 5 years ago, coworker. 10 years ago. Just
Hmm.
keep writing down each memory, and eventually, one of two things is going to happen. You're going to have a concrete memory somewhere between 2 and 8 years old, or you may not have a specific memory, but you'll have a feeling of, God, I don't know what happened, but it feels like somewhere I was around 3 or 4. Well, now you've
Hmm.
just proven what I've said earlier.
Hmm.
Emotions are learned, and whenever we have an adult emotion, we're reliving childhood.
Right.
So in this moment when you're frustrated, you're not an adult. You're still dealing with, you're experiencing an unhealed wound from childhood. And
Hmm.
now you've just laid out one of your many worst day cycles. The
Mm.
recovery process, and so what my process, emotional authenticity, teaches you is, one, how to discover all of your worst day cycles, and then two, how to heal and create a new emotional chemical addiction, a new neural pathway for that original event so that it stops reliving itself as an adult. Now we're human, we'll never conquer all of this. As I like to say, recovery is substantial, it's never complete, but you will have a concrete process that whenever something happens, you'll know the exact steps up that mountain, how to sled down. You
Mhm.
won't be frozen. You'll know
Right.
exactly why I'm feeling this way, where it came from,
Okay.
what I need to do. Some days you'll you will be able to execute it and drop that feeling like that. Some
Yeah.
days it will be more difficult,
Yeah.
but you'll have space for grace and forgiveness for yourself and go, ah, God,
Yeah.
I'm just being human today.
Yeah,
Just one of those
exactly.
days.
Yeah, and you can just keep going back to this practice,
Yeah.
and really like commit these steps to memory and just keep living them. When you think about, you were talking about the brain earlier and the neuroplasticity of that, where you're really rewiring and creating these new pathways of doing things, of the way that you're thinking, the way you're feeling and believing, all of those things simultaneously.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And,
so
and
it's
they just become automatic programs in our subconscious. And so and this is what happens to people, the
Mhm.
worst day cycle contains four things: trauma, it initiates in trauma. As soon as that trauma
Mhm.
happens, it creates fear. Well, what does fear
Mhm.
do? It shuts down our ability to process intellectually. We get stuck in the emotion. That's where the emotional chemical addiction begins.
Mm,
That
yes.
that unhealed
Mhm.
emotion turns into shame, step three. And
Yeah.
then, because we're so young and it's too big, we have to go into denial and self-deception, minimize, repress, deny,
Yeah.
condone. My parents were great. That's not affecting me.
So I had
No.
a perfect childhood.
And so then we pick the
Yeah, but I
exact
can't
same
remember
person
any of
again.
it. You know?
So now we're married to the exact same person who's just like mom or dad.
Yeah.
Boom, the cycle just keeps repeating. And so
Yeah.
when you learn, how to confront your trauma, fear, shame, and denial, and live in what I call the counterbalance to that, the healing process, what I call the authentic self cycle, is truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. So you get into truth that in this moment, what I'm feeling, I'm doing to myself. I'm going to
Mm.
take responsibility, work on my worst day cycle to uncover it and do the recovery work so I can shift that emotion. That's the healing. And when I do steps one, two, and three, I can forgive you and forgive myself. And from that place, I can
Mm.
live and act mature and moderate.
Wow. That's really powerful work.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm sure
Yeah,
it's,
because I'm all of those things. I had to,
yeah.
and look, I'm still a mess.
Yeah. And I
But
think that's important to bring
yeah,
forth, because people
yeah,
will look at people like you and I and think, oh, they're totally healed. It's like, no, it's a process, and we keep working through these processes. But you can
yeah.
get to a place where your overall life happiness it's intact. It's there.
Here's a great way to look at it. So
Hmm.
people get a grasp of how difficult recovery is, and also more importantly, how to have grace for yourself. Think
Yeah.
of golf. even if you don't like golf
Uh-huh.
and don't know much about it, just go, say you're a man or woman, hates golf, never watched it. Just turn it on and watch how these are the most elite athletes in their field. There's a select 150 people across the planet that can do what they do. Think of that. That's an unbelievable skill. Teachers are perfect, yet they can shoot 62 one day, 82 the next day.
Mm.
There's a huge disparity day to day. In the middle of their round, they can go on this stretch where it's, birdie, 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 and then
Mhm.
double bogey, quadruple bogey. Like there's no consistency. Very
Right.
rarely do they have a round that's like this. It's all over the place. That's what
Mm.
recovery is like. We're human, we're limited. And what you learn by developing the authentic self cycle and emotional authenticity is to learn that whether I shoot 62 or 82, whether
Mhm.
I make a birdie or a triple bogey, whether I'm able to turn everything around, to stop standing in front of their abuse, to accept them and prioritize myself, doesn't matter. I always have value and worth at all times. And that's the big thing to recognize is, that's why I'm so open and transparent about my past and current struggles,
Yeah.
because I'm just like a golfer. One
Up
day
and
I
down.
wake up and
Yeah.
my day is a 62. You can't touch me.
Yeah.
And the next day it's an 82 and I shouldn't even be playing at all. And that's
Mhm.
called life. But
Mhm.
at all times, my value and worth isn't dependent on whether I am able to turn everything around or not stand in front of abuse. Even on those days when I can't,
Mhm.
I have the same value and worth as when I can. And that's recovery.
Mhm.
That's learning
Absolutely.
recovery.
And incidentally, too, when you think about a pro golfer who gets to that level,
Mhm.
what the kind of training they have to go through to get to that level. And that's
Yeah,
really what you're talking about too, is this is a training, a way of training yourself
yeah,
to get to a level of general overall happiness in your life. And yeah, there's going to be,
yeah.
it's life,
I saw my
the
first
ups and
counselor
downs.
at the age of 21. I'm
Mm-hmm.
59, just
Uh-huh.
turned 59.
Yeah.
I've been researching and working on this for decades.
Yeah.
And I still shoot 82s, 92s, 102s.
Yeah.
It's called being human.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's
It
okay.
is absolutely. And I love that you keep bringing up to give yourself grace.
And
Um,
that's the more you work the authentic self cycle, truth, responsibility, and healing, the forgiveness piece is the grace. You learn to go because what's keeping us from accepting grace is we're stuck in the shame and denial portions of the worst day cycle.
mhm.
Because of the shame that was sent to us. Because when we have to take care of these parents,
Mhm.
what there's an underlying message, even if it was never spoken, is you don't matter.
Oh my
Your
gosh,
needs and
all the
wants
time.
don't matter.
Yeah.
All that matters are mine. You're worthless.
Yep. Oh my
And so
gosh.
that's why we can't forgive ourselves. And then we deny. And so if you're unable to accept the grace and forgiveness of how recovery goes like this, and we won't be able to execute all this, it means there's still a lot of shame and denial
Mhm.
operating in your life or you need it to just be
Right.
over and be done with. I don't want to
Yeah.
feel this again. All of
Yeah.
those are, there's still a big part of the journey is you're going to have to keep doing a lot of truth, responsibility, and healing so you can get to the grace and forgiveness.
That's perfect. Now I know we're kind of running out of a little time here. We can go a little bit longer, but I would love to hear a little bit more too about boundaries, and maybe some tips on boundaries that can be very useful for people that are listening, most of whom have narcissistic parents. And a lot of people I know that uh, come and work with me or that are in this community are really dealing with aging narcissistic parents. And so there's this conflict of now they're elderly and I feel bad for them, but they're taking advantage of me even more than they ever have before because they're feeling helpless and all of that. So I wonder what kinds of boundaries and things might you
That's learning
implement?
to say no. I have a 5-step process. It's not very involved, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible.
Sure.
And because this is critical, especially with those aging parents. And
Yeah.
and when you grow up in this environment, we are trained, we're not allowed to say no. Our needs and wants don't matter. We are in service to them. And
Mhm.
so that's why we feel that guilt. It's actually shame. People mischaracterize it. It's shame that we're feeling. I'm bad. I'm the bad child. I'm not worthy if I say no to them. So
Mhm.
the 5-step process has two magic phrases. And the magic phrases work every time. And so the 5-step process starts off with one magic phrase. So
Mhm.
whenever a parent or toxic person makes a request, your instant response is, you know what, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Do you see why
Okay.
that's magic? Because
Yeah.
they can't argue with it. What do you mean you got to think about it? You know, that's another great question. Let me think about that and I'll
Let me
get back.
think of it. You just keep repeating it, right?
That's why it's magic. Because what they want to do, the reason we can't say no is they're going to force us to justify it, to
Right.
prove to them, and we will
Right.
never win that argument. They're too manipulative. They don't play by the same rules.
No.
They cross over the net and break all the rules of tennis and communication. And so
Right.
that's why we use the magic phrase because it puts a net up. And so no matter what they say, no matter what they come back with,
Mhm.
you just repeat, you know, let me think about that and I'll get back to you. And then you use steps 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
You go off and you think, okay, if I do this for them,
Mhm.
will I ever keep score that I did it for them? If I do this for them, will I ever bring it up in the future or throw it in their face that I did it for them? Or 3, will I have any resentment that if I do this for them? Now,
Mhm.
all 3 of those are basically the same, but what I've learned is everybody uses one of those primarily. You know, they would call their resentment is that they keep score, or their resentment is that they throw it in their face. And so if
Okay.
you think any of those things might happen, and this goes with anybody, a friend, coworker, whatever it is, spouse, I never say yes to anything. My response to everything is, you know, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. Even if I
Mhm.
know my answer is yes, I always ask myself those 3 questions. If I think any of those will happen, I'd never say no to them. Think
Yeah.
of it. How do you instantly feel and what do you picture when somebody says no to you?
Well, done. I guess we're not doing that thing,
Well,
but
but what's your first memory of being told no?
oh my gosh. Well, when you're little, like little,
No.
no, yeah,
How dare
that's a
you?
good point. Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's why nobody likes to hear no and nobody likes to say it because it
Mm.
instantly brings the worst day cycle of parenting
Mhm.
because parents were never taught that you want to correct behavior,
Yeah.
you don't want to shame behavior. But instead, we all get shamed. No, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Pointing the
so if
finger and shame, right? So
that's
it's
what we
throwing the
all
shame.
see and feel,
Yeah.
whether we say it or hear it. Oh my God, I'm so bad for asking that question. It's a
Well,
trigger response.
and it's that thing that we also have the hardest time doing when we grow up with narcissistic parents. Because, like you said, we're not supposed to say no, but also if we did say no, they would go ballistic. So
Exactly.
typically,
So you use magic phrase number 2.
okay.
And this is another example of a wall of pleasantness. You come back to them and you say, you know, mom, I thought about it. Just doesn't work for me.
Hmm.
So do you see?
Yeah.
I didn't mention anything about them. It's just like the wall of pleasantness. I'm just telling you about me. Well, what do you mean it doesn't work for you? You know, that's a great question. Let me think
Right.
about that and I'll get back to you. You know, I've thought about it, mom, and it just doesn't work for me. Well, what part of it doesn't work for you? Well, it just doesn't work for me. Well, aren't you going to tell me why you won't do it?
Yeah.
No, it just doesn't work for me. Well, you're being crazy. What are you doing? You've never done this. Why are you treating me this way?
Mhm.
I hear that you're having a lot of feelings. I feel sad about that, but this just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
You just repeat the phrase. over and
Over.
over and over. And so those two magic phrases take you out of the coercive, manipulative, controlling dynamic of the toxic, narcissistic person, and you stay on your side of the tennis court.
Mm-hmm.
You don't let, if they, through the whole process, they're going to take your inventory across the net. And then if they continue, you go, Mom, I've let you know how I, what my decision is. And I see that you'd like to keep having this conversation. It's no longer working for me, and I'm choosing to make myself feel uncomfortable. So I'm happy to talk about anything else you'd like to talk about. But if you bring this up again, I'm going to have to leave. Well, what do you? Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Have a great day, Mom. It was great seeing you.
And I think everybody's putting together now, this is why we over-explain everything,
Yeah,
right? Because they pushed at us to over-explain. And when you
that's the
stop
shame.
that, yeah, it's the
Yeah,
shame speaking.
it's the shame because
Yeah.
shame is all about I've lost my inherent value and worth. And
Mm,
so explaining is me trying to justify my value and worth. See, if I
hmm.
give them a good enough reason and excuse, they'll accept my no.
Right. Especially
Well,
if that excuse is something, of course, they have to approve of the excuse.
exactly. So
Yeah.
now we've fallen right into their trap. Now we are trying to create some sort of reason or excuse that makes them feel better and sacrifices our needs and wants, our morals and
Mhm.
values, our negotiables and non-negotiables.
Mhm.
Now we are going to keep score at how they did it. We're going to throw it in their face either silently or actually when we finally blow up. And we are definitely going to sit in silent resentment while we drive away. The next day, the next month, anytime we hear their name and the phone rings, it just boom, it triggers it. Well, the thing to remember is
Mhm.
I can see people going, oh my gosh, I'm doing this to myself, like instant shame,
Yeah.
or recognizing, wow, by saying yes and not doing this process, I'm setting up my own pain. Well, here's the thing. You are never, ever to blame for doing something you weren't aware wasn't good for you. You're always doing the best you can with the information you had at the time. And since none of this is taught, you're not to
Mhm.
blame. So remind yourself that today you're literally an infant. You were just born because today is the first day you learned, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother way of doing this.
Mhm.
So from this day forward, it's the first time in your life you've ever had a choice to deal
Mhm.
with these people differently. You never had that choice. And so
Yeah.
there's no reason to be shamed. It's like, would
Mhm.
you feel shame if I told you to build a jet airplane? Well, of course not. You're not an aeronautical engineer,
No
didn't
idea.
you? Well, it's the same here.
Yeah.
No one ever taught you this five-step process. And so
Right.
today's your first day.
Yeah.
And so that quells that shame that they want us to stay stuck in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so empowering. And
And
that's
it's
what we
loving.
need.
It's
It's,
loving. That's what people
yeah.
don't realize. The most loving thing you can ever say to anyone is no. So if people, now
Mm.
that they've heard how to love their mom and dad, if
Mhm.
they choose not to use this, what that means is now that they're aware, they weren't aware of this before, but
Mhm.
now that they know there's an option where they can truly show love. Because think of it, if you're keeping score, if you're
Mhm.
throwing it in their face or resenting, you're saying yes because you're trying to manipulate and control them to get them to like you and be the parent you wanted. And
Yeah.
it's not working. So if
Yeah.
you choose to go back to that, now you are actively choosing to be just as manipulative and controlling as they are.
Yeah. Ooh, and that's something that it's hard to look at, but we have to look at that.
That's truth, responsibility, healing, and
Yeah.
forgiveness. And so
Yeah.
we have to recognize, oh my God, all the times I said yes, I didn't know. I was in denial. I didn't know
Right.
that I was trying to manipulate and control them and get them to like me. I
Mhm.
didn't know I wasn't taking responsibility. I had no idea there was this other healing way to do it. Oh my God. No wonder I couldn't forgive myself for the shame I felt when they'd make a request. Well,
Right.
now that I do, I can forgive myself. And so no is honest, it's truthful,
Right.
it's safe. There's no manipulating and controlling of them.
Mhm.
It lets them off the hook. So I love even if somebody doesn't know this 5-step process,
Mhm.
I love it when somebody says no, because that lets me know
Mhm.
I'm not going to hear about it. They're not going to throw it in my face. They're not going to come back and say, I did this, this, and this. And they're not going to be sitting there covertly getting passive aggressive and pouty and
Mm.
manipulative and resentful. I got truth from them. I'm safe.
Mm.
Yeses
Mhm.
scare me.
That's interesting.
No, because
Yeah.
almost everybody uses a yes because
Yeah.
they want something in return. And so you'll know if
Mm.
that's true. If you've ever kept score, if you've ever thrown it in somebody's face, or if you
Mm.
ever feel resentful, that means you use that yes because you expected something in return. That's
Mhm.
manipulative and controlling. And we were taught that by
Yeah,
narcissistic, toxic parents.
right.
So that's why I'm always hesitant with a yes. The
Yeah.
more recovery they have, the more comfortable I am. The less recovery, I don't fully
Hmm.
buy into the yes. I'm very cautious. I don't take full advantage of the yes. I wait and see
Yeah,
what happens. But no,
it
I'm
makes
like,
sense.
I give people hugs. I'm like, I'm so happy. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't hurt me to hear no.
yeah. That's good. And it's good getting to that space where you can be comfortable with that and be comfortable with your own no, which is
Yeah.
a really, especially in the face of the narcissistic
Yeah.
parent.
Which isn't a
So,
no. It's just, this
yeah,
doesn't work for me.
yeah, I like that. This doesn't work for me.
Just doesn't, and
Yeah.
that could change.
Mhm.
There might be say you always go to the movies on Thursday night with your best friend. And you go, it just doesn't work for me. But next week, maybe you were tired. Maybe it was a bad day at work. But now
Yeah,
this Thursday, yeah, I'd love to go.
yeah,
It change. But today just doesn't work for me.
right. And you don't have to explain every single reason why.
No, you're an adult. You're no longer
Yeah.
a child. Only a child feels they need to explain because
Yeah,
but I'm a mature and moderate adult recognizes I get to choose
yeah,
if I want to explain. And I'm
absolutely.
choosing not to. I'm choosing a wall of pleasantness because I know, remember, acceptance. They will never listen. They will never
Mhm.
admit that they're the problem. They will never compromise. They will never be the parent we need them to be, and they will never change. And so, to protect myself from that,
Yeah.
I exercise my internal boundary. I use
Mhm.
the wall of pleasantness, and I say, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So helpful. So, Kenny, can you tell people how they can get in touch with you or
Sure.
anything that you want to just share, any kind of work you want them to know about?
You bet. My website is almost like a Google for personal development. I have
Mhm.
tons of free downloads, blog articles, links to all my YouTube videos. I have a whole recommended reading list that I feel all the books on there are books I've read, books that have been a major part of my recovery. I think they should be part of everybody's recovery.
Mhm.
You can also, there are direct links to my own books, which I personally believe um, need to be a part of a person's recovery. If you want to book a private session, there's a direct link to do that, a direct link to my newsletter. If you want to keep, informed of things, um, my whole online university of
Mhm.
classes, which teach you the full recovery process to get out of the worst day cycle into the authentic self cycle. There's links to all of that. So you'll learn about my mentor and my life story if you want to get more background on me. Other recovery centers that use my content for their, addicted clients and things like that. So
Mhm.
I tried to create make it easy for people to find solutions.
Mhm.
And so, there's a lot there depending on what solution you're looking for. I
Yeah,
pretty much have it for you.
that's great. And then you do have a free gift for everybody.
So yes, I have a free gift. It's how to keep our boundaries in 3 simple steps. It's a free download that you can find on my website. Just go to kennyweiss.net, then head over to the resources tab, and right at the top, click resources again.
Mhm.
And there's a drop-down menu. You'll see several free downloads. One of them is how to keep our boundaries in 3 simple steps. And you can
Excellent.
download that as a kind of a little notebook to help you with all of this.
Great. And we'll have that link available for everybody watching the summit. So thank you so much for being a part of the summit and
Oh,
for imparting so much wisdom. There's so much practical and useful information for people to apply right away. So I know we all appreciate that
I
in
hope it was
this
helpful.
complicated world of narcissistic parents and toxic family systems.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me, and hopefully people walk away going, yeah, that was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you.